CBN TV on CBN.com. All the video you love in one easy-to-use location.
Well, college sports fans are familiar with the term redshirting. It's used to describe an athlete who will sit out for a year, giving him time to grow before stepping foot on the playing field. But now it's not just college athletes who are redshirting. An increasing number of parents are holding their children back from kindergarten. Charlene Israel explains.
Education is like building a house. And if you don't have the proper foundation, whatever you put on top of it is going to crumble.
Kindergarten can be hard enough.
They're dealing with buses, with new teachers, with going into a lunchroom.
Kindergarten can be even harder for younger children.
There is evidence-based medicine that shows that children's brains just aren't ready to do that at such a young age.
That's why some parents are taking drastic steps to help their kids deal with the pressures of early life.
Redshirting, redshirting, redshirting.
Redshirting is basically holding your child back a year so that they can start kindergarten at a better advantage.
Redshirting works like this. Most school districts have a cutoff date when it comes to enrolling a child in kindergarten. Those born after the cutoff have to wait a year. During that year, the child grows older and more developed. That's great news for them. Not so great for those who slid into school just before the cutoff date.
My son, when he was here in the kindergarten class, he was behind in reading, and he recognized the fact that he was behind. He'd come home and say, "Mom, I'm not reading like, the other kids are." And I think that hurt his self-esteem a little bit, so that's when I decided, you know what, I'm not going to force this.
And she's not alone. Some statistics estimate that kindergarten redshirting has tripled since the 1970s.
For me, it was a really hard decision. My youngest son, he is the baby by far. I mean, there are many years between he and his oldest siblings, and even though he was really smart, maturity-wise and socially, he was just behind.
In a kindergarten class, the difference between a child who's almost 6 versus a child who just turned 5 can be staggering. Some kids are able to read and write. Others are just learning how to sit still.
And I knew there was no way that at 5, he was going to be able to go into a normal kindergarten setting, be able to sit for 3 hours and just with no problem and be able to do the work and work independently without any kind of issues.
There's another side to it. Kindergarten is becoming increasingly academic, and some kids are falling behind.
Kids are expected going into kindergarten to know all their letters, all their numbers, even how to read some, how to write. These are things that most of us weren't taught until kindergarten or first grade.
When I went to kindergarten, they were hoping that we wouldn't spill our finger paints, and they were hoping that we could get along with our classmates.
And the problems only get worse as the child gets older.
I didn't want to start them off behind because, that first year, hey, if you screw them up right out of the gate, there's no telling if they're going to be able to rebound from that.
So if they're younger, if they're not feeling secure about themselves, if they really haven't gotten the foundation of the things that they need to know yet because developmentally they just weren't there yet, I just see a snowball of ugly happening to them.
But not everyone agrees about the benefits of redshirting. One study found no additional benefits to the practice. Another group actually advised against it. They say it exasperates the problem, as parents from lower-income households may not be able to afford to keep their kids home an additional year. One expert says kids should be starting school as early as 3, not as late as 6. Still, that's not stopping some parents who say they're the ones who know what's best for their kids.
To me, chronological age doesn't always match where a child is as far as their learning or development.
And so a new crop of schools is emerging, one that's being called kindergarten prep.
Which is kind of a modified preschool, different in contact, maybe more didactic work, which is more sight words and more learning rather than play and learning combined.
So if you're a parent wanting to give your child a leg up on the other students or a head start on school, Just know that the options are there and that the debate continues.
I don't know if this is necessarily a choice for everybody, but it was the right choice for us. Life is just not fair. You just have to make the best of it. And the best choices that you can with the information that you have at the time.
I would love to pretend that because I held my child back a year that now, his childhood is going to be just unicorns and rainbows. But we all know that I feel like, have I given him an advantage as far as his own personal growth? Absolutely I do. Do I think that this is right for every child? No, because we all develop differently.
Charlene Israel, CBN News.
Well, Terry, what do you think about this? Do you think it's a smart idea?
You know, I actually did this with my two oldest kids because it was a program here at CBN that influenced me. I wasn't even working here at the time, but you had a program called, I think it was Sing, Spell, Read, and Write. And I spoke to the woman who developed that, and she unequivocally suggested this. I had my oldest child was a son, second a daughter, redshirted both of them as far as, I just had them repeat kindergarten twice. They didn't call it redshirting then. My son went on, boys, they say, develop later than girls. And I didn't want him to be the baby of the class, and he had an August birthday. But my daughter, later on, we wound up bumping up a class back to where she would have been because she just was ahead of the kids in her class.
To keep her interested.
But I think it benefited both of them, actually. It gave them some space to grow without heavy expectation at an early age. So I'm for it.
Yeah, I would be all for it because, number one, I think it would reduce the exposure to bullying.
Yes.
That if you're one of the oldest in the class, then you're going to be recognized as a leader by the other students and by the teacher, and they'll just be an advantage for you going forward that will be tremendous and really help shape a character for life success. So often we think of school in terms of academics and are you smart enough and do you know your numbers and letters and all that kind of stuff, but they're real life lessons that you need to learn that are actually more determinative of success in life than academics.
I actually saw this in both of my children later on because you don't think about things like this when you're talking about academics, but driving. Do you really, want your child to be driving a year earlier than they need to be? And there's pressure to do that when their friends are all driving. So both of my kids that redshirted in kindergarten have always been very much leaders, very independent thinkers. So I think there are those underlying things that definitely solidify a change in their lives. It's good. It's all good.